I am not an audio person, so I am not qualified to do a deep dive into such a advanced recorder like the Tascam X8 that I'm using right now to record my audio through my microphone here. But I do like getting the best audio I possibly can, and I saw this as soon as it came out, and I pre-ordered it, and I have been using it ever since it came out, and I have been writing down some things I like and things that I don't like about it. So let's jump into it. This will be a more conversational video. It won't be super technical. The first one I wrote down was the 32-bit float recording obviously is the number one reason I bought this device. I have actually used it twice now since I have been using this, and I have blown out audio with my Zoom H6 in the past, specifically filming cars and car exhausts. Getting a recorder right next to that and then someone turning on the engine, there is a louder initial burst of someone's exhaust than just idling. So it's really hard to kind of judge that sometimes. And someone, if you don't have a cat on your car, it's like an earthquake when that thing starts up. So having 32-bit float recording has already came in handy twice, and this hasn't been out for that long. Speaking of my Zoom H6, I have really loved this recorder. It's been with me for a long time, and I've shot a lot of stuff with this. But that being said, I have a specific Sennheiser mic that I always use with this recorder, and I've literally had to gaff tape off the gain knobs because each of these are different settings. This one is the YouTube videos. This one is filming interviews outside with like a blimp or diffusion on my mic. And then this fourth one is for car videos. So I have each one of these, and number 3 is like if I'm doing something that's not one of those, I'll manually use number 3 and not use any of my gaff taped off gain knobs. I've gaff taped them off because they have accidentally bumped in the past and just blew out my audio. With the Tascam X8, I have to still set my gain at a reasonable level, but if something does peak, it's recoverable with that 32-bit float recording. So that has been awesome. I've used it twice already. The next thing I love about the Tascam X8 is the big, easy to use screen. I don't want to move it around too much and disconnect any cables here. I'm sure an audio person is losing their mind right now somewhere, but the screen on this thing is huge and it's easy to navigate. So it does take a little bit of initial upfront time investment to learn the menus, but after you learn them, it's really intuitive and super easy. The next thing I love about the Tascam X8 is the size. I can fit this thing in my bag, and if I need a little bit more space and I know I'll be using XLR microphones or the smaller 3.5 millimeter mics, I can just unscrew these top mics and it becomes an even smaller profile. It's about the same as my Zoom H6 when you take the top microphones off. So I was really used to this form factor before. The fact that this is really close to the size of my Zoom H6 really makes it easy when I'm packing up. I didn't really have to change anything in that department. My next pro for the X8 is the connectivity options. It's really similar to my H6, but I've grown to love the ability to use tons of XLR mics or the top mics, or I can switch the directions of these top mics really easily. It's cool that it is really the only recorder I'm going to need if I'm ever going out in the field with all of the connection options. My next pro is that the Tascam X8 turns on quickly. I was using the Zoom H4n before I got my Zoom H6, and the Zoom H4n takes forever to turn on, and if you're on location, people are waiting on you. You don't want to be the guy that people are waiting on to turn a device on. You just want to flip the switch and have it turn on. So the H6 turns on really quick. I think the Tascam X8 might be as fast or even faster than my H6. So it hasn't annoyed me yet, so that's a good thing. The next thing I wrote down is the mics on top are great and easy to adjust depending on what you're filming. If you want to have something, start left and go to right or vice versa, you can have that. Or if you just want everything to sound like it's right in front of you, you can switch the mics and it's right there. That's another thing I wrote down here. With my Zoom H6, I was kind of stuck just in this pattern. The next thing I wrote down is I like the fact that this uses USB-C to charge like I'm using it right here, very carefully moving it around. The H6 uses a mini USB cable, and this is a little harder to find. If I forgot my batteries and my USB-C cable for my H6, I wasn't recording audio that day. if I forget my batteries and my cable with my X8, I can find a USB-C cable at a gas station or something really, really easy. This would be easier if it was a mini USB-C cable even, because you can find those for Android chargers, for example, but it is a pretty specific micro, or yeah, this is the mini. It's the fatter USB. So that was kind of a pain. It's never burned me because I always made sure I had a cable, but with this one, USB-C, I love USB-C. My next pro about the X8 is the battery life. I don't know how long the batteries that came with this lasted, but they lasted through multiple shoots, multiple YouTube videos, multiple interviews, and just some other tests that I was doing while I was figuring it out. And I was actually surprised that I forgot this thing took batteries because I just started up and assumed it was going to work. So the battery life is good. Check your batteries, but it is reliable enough to get you through a couple shoots on one set for AA batteries. My next pro is you can monitor audio with headphones. Again, I could do this with my H6, but I like that this can do it, and I just am a big fan of monitoring audio when I'm out filming. On to some things I dislike about the X8. The first one is the price. The X8 costs $500. My Zoom H6 that I've used for years and have had great results overall with costed $300 or $350. So how did I justify spending a ton of money on an audio recorder when I still had an audio recorder? Well, I thought back to a project that I blew out the audio with my H6. And if someone came along and said, hey, for $500, I will restore all of your audio to crystal clear, clean audio and no one will know you blew it out, I would have paid that $500. I probably would have paid more because it's embarrassing when you mess up the audio. The X8, spending that $500 and having clean audio that if someone is really emotional and they're talking really quiet and they just really settle down, you can boost that audio back up. Or if someone gets really loud and animated, you can bring that down to a usable level and not have it clip and be distracting from your video is really important. So that's how I justified the price of the X8. The next thing I dislike about the X8 is that there is a learning curve when you go first pick it up. If you have someone that's not really familiar with this particular device, like if they have a ton of H6s and you throw them the X8 day of, they're gonna take a little guidance to navigate through the screens. This is pretty straightforward. You got a gain knob, hit record. You're pretty much good to go if you see the levels, at -12. With this, you kind of have to hunt through the menus, and there's some more steps if you're doing like really specialized stuff. But if you just use the manual mode, you can go through the menus pretty easily. The setup will take a little bit of time getting used to, at least it did for me coming from a really simple, straightforward recorder. But once you're over that learning curve, it's really easy. The next thing I dislike about the X8 is that it uses micro SD cards instead of full-size SD cards. Not really a huge deal, but I have tons of large SD cards. For my drones, I have micro SD cards, so it's not as big of a deal, but I would have liked to see a just full-size SD card so I wouldn't have to, if I'm using my MacBook's built-in reader, I won't have to get an adapter to put my SD card in. It's really kind of nitpicky, but it is something that I ran into, and I wish it had a full-size SD card. Now on to my biggest complaint of the X8 is that these mics on top just feel really cheap. Like they feel very cheap for a $500 recorder. So if it is possible to upgrade these mics to something a little more durable, I would love that, because once you're putting these in, you kind of have to put them a certain way and make sure they seat correctly, and then you can tighten them. And it almost feels like you're gonna break them if you don't follow the exact guides on which way to lock and unlock them. And I feel like if I hand this to someone else and they aren't really familiar with it and they're just going quickly, they could strip those out or break them pretty easy. So if I see one thing failing on this device, it's these top mics. And the final thing that I wrote down that I dislike about the X8 is the large file size that comes along with the 32-bit float recording. I understand this comes with the territory, and it's like you're shooting ProRes RAW versus just shooting 422 internal. There is more data, so there's a bigger file size associated with that. Just like RAW versus JPEG, there's more information, so you're gonna have to be able to store more information. So I understand where that's coming from, and it's just part of the process. If you enjoyed this video, you might like my audio solutions for my A7S III rig. I'll leave a link to that on screen now. And I just want to say thank you guys for watching to the end, and I'll see you in the next one. Also, let me know what you think of these like conversational videos. I just wrote down some bullet points in Notion and just started talking about it. And I just want to apologize to all the audio people that I inevitably upset with this video.